So let's just give it a couple more seconds and we'll get started. Looks like we have people joining both from the UK and Japan. So good morning to everyone based in the UK. Thanks very much for joining us. Just with the interest of time, I will get started, but please feel free to send any comments or questions in throughout if anything is unclear. My name is Sarah Backley, and I'm the Executive Director at the British Chamber of Commerce in Japan. It's our great pleasure to be welcoming so many people from the UK as well as here in Japan to today's webinar entitled Finding Success in Japan. Firstly, just a little bit about the BCCJ. For anyone that doesn't know, we exist here in Japan. We don't have a physical presence in the UK, but here we support any companies that are looking to navigate the Japanese market. That goes for any companies looking to enter for the first time, as well as any businesses looking to expand an existing presence here. So if there's anything that the BCCJ might be able to help you with, for example, access to the right information, like what today's speaker will be presenting, as well as any strategic introductions or tailored promotion to make sure that your messaging is being well received in the Japanese context, please feel free to get in touch anytime. So what can we expect from today's session? The webinar today will run for a maximum of 90 minutes, and that includes time for questions that you may have. So as we go, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens there, just to send anything through, and our speaker will do his best to address them during the session. In terms of content, we'll be going beyond the general stereotypes and surface level etiquette to give you more of a practical, insightful overview of what the Japanese market is like today. This will include practical guidance on entry strategies, as well as the realities of doing business here, the types of information that you might not find from a Google search or an AI search. So please do use this chance to ask any specific questions that you might have tailored to your own business. If you're an SME, particularly in the B2B space, and are considering Japan as a potential growth market, this session is definitely for you. So we'll be happy to connect you with our speaker after the session as well. Which brings me over to today's discussion itself, which will be led by Ralph Meyer, founder of Santen Consulting, who brings many years of experience helping companies understand how to navigate and succeed in Japan's dynamic market. He has a lovely presentation planned for you today. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Ralph, please, to take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon in Japan and good morning to the UK. I'm very happy to have so many participants here interested in the presentation and this webinar. So yes, today will be about the cultural backgrounds that is a little bit more concrete about when you want to do business in Japan and not so much about these typical stereotypes and behaviors. So let me share my screen, as always. Always interesting if it works. Yes, okay, good, yeah. So maybe a little bit about me first. I'm born in 1971, 54 years old, from Germany, and studied chemistry and did a PhD also in chemistry in catalysis, and then joined a German chemical company called Evonik, and started as a lab manager, group leader in R&D, then changed to a position in internal management consulting. And after that, I was asked if I would like to head a project for a global rollout of an HRM, so human resource management system. And this brought me then the first time into real contact with different cultures around the globe. Of course, being an R&D manager and a consultant, I had contacts to the colleagues overseas and in other regions, but it was more on a project type, and it was like 3 weeks going to Mobile, Alabama, for example, and then coming back. So yes, there had been some touch points, but doing this global HR system where we had a goal to have all employees in one database was very interesting because I could find some very interesting data peculiarities, that things that are necessary in Japan for the HR work are not accessible, or an information you cannot get in other countries from the employees. So it was very interesting to see all these cultural differences on a surface actually. And then I wanted to go abroad and a little bit closer back to the business. And then there was an opening in Japan, and I applied, and lucky me, I was selected to come to Japan in 2013, 12 years ago now, as the general manager and head of regional development, which basically is the business development for Evonik Japan. And in that time, I learned a lot from my Japanese colleagues about the peculiarities in Japan. So, what are the differences in how we do business? What are the cultural backgrounds? And I also had a chance in that time to visit several executive trainings. One, for example, in INSEAD in France, where I could listen to Erin Meyer, who wrote the book, The Culture Map, which is exactly dealing about all these differences that we have in the cultures and how to apply them. After a few years, Evonik asked me to go back to Germany, but I wanted to stay in Japan, so we got an amicable divorce, and I started my own business, Santen Consulting. And what we do today is mainly that we support foreign companies in doing business in Japan, being their representative office. What is exactly, I will come to that later. We also do a little bit other things, project works, market studies, and so on. But it's basically my background. So what we are talking today, I would give some ideas and information about the relevant, for business relevant cultural differences. So again, it's not about the bowing angle or that you should not have a hole in your sock because you maybe have to take off your shoes at restaurants or even in a meeting room. It is really about when you want to prepare for entering the Japanese market. So what is it that makes it sometimes so difficult, or it feels so difficult, and how to overcome this, of course. Then a few ideas about the product selection and the service concept, which is very important. We will have a Q&A session then, depending on your questions. As Sarah mentioned, please feel free to use the chat box in Zoom. And then I will give some ideas about solutions for business development and market entry in Japan, and why we, specializing on SME in B2B business, prefer this approach of a representative office. Why Japan? I think, yeah, you're probably here because you have some interest and some ideas already. So it's the fourth largest economy now in the world. There's an overall stagnating, maybe slightly increasing GDP in yen terms. In US dollars, it doesn't look that promising, unfortunately, but there's a lot of currency exchange rate impact on this. But with a decreasing workforce means that there's an increasing GDP per capita. We have several growth industries in Japan, although the overall GDP is rather stagnating, but electronics, semiconductors, robotic biotechnology is still something very important. Medicine and health, of course, a very aging society is a big topic in Japan. We have 127, well, depending what you count to that, roughly million consumers with a high buying power. So high prices are achievable in Japan, but they come also with high quality and service expectations that I will come to later in the presentation. What I would like to set the basis a little bit about culture. What we are talking now about is basically what Merriam-Webster defines as the national culture and corporate culture. So the everyday existence, the way of life, the things that we do in our daily lives, which is our culture in every country or region. So what we consider normal behavior. And then corporate culture, of course, is a kind of a subtype of this, where you also see differences in Japan between a startup and an old traditional company like NTT. There is, of course, also within the culture, within the corporations, there are different cultures, but the national culture is mainly what we talk about. And the funny thing with culture is that we are always a part of it. It's always around us. Yeah, there's no way to get or to live without a culture. But it's difficult to get aware of it because we usually don't question how we behave every day. We get from being a small kid, yeah, we get socialized into this culture and this behavior. So a culture is never good or bad. And we are not talking now about that the Japanese are doing this better or worse than the British or the Germans. This is not the purpose of today. Culture in itself is always good. But an accepted behavior in one culture can be considered wrong in another. So the purpose of today's webinar is really to create this awareness of the differences in order to work with them, in order to understand them, to avoid misunderstandings and annoyance that comes out of this, in order to successfully work together. So coming now to the main peculiarities in Japan, I compared to the Western world, I would say then first of all, keeping harmony is most important. This is something that will be within the talk now all the time, yeah, that you will hear this word harmony. So the living in harmony with each other is very important for the Japanese culture and the Japanese people. But then we have the main differences in my 12 years experience now here in Japan in decision making, trust building, and when we disagree or have to give a negative feedback to others. Here, we will have decision making, trust building as a very strong time perspective that you need to consider when you enter the Japanese market. Disagreements, negative feedback is one of the biggest source of misunderstandings, annoyance, and so on, which then also reflects back to the trust, yeah, because somehow it can also build into mistrust, which of course is always the dead of the business. We often hear that people say, yeah, Japan is so difficult because of the language barrier and the bad English proficiency in Japan, which in itself is, of course, correct. The English proficiency is not very good in Japan. However, the literal translation from a Japanese content to English and vice versa nowadays is not really a big topic anymore. So just the literal translation can be done with interpreters, dolmetschers nowadays, with AI translation tools and so on. So we usually don't have this really as a big barrier or a big gap for or hurdle for doing business in Japan anymore. However, it is not usually the literal translation that makes the problem. It is to understand the what is behind the translation, and this comes again in the topic of disagreement and negative feedback. Where I will give you also an example for that. So the translation itself is not a big hurdle. This can be very good overcome with the translators, but to understand really the meaning is important and needs some experience. So decision making in Japan, why is it so different? There's a proverb in Japan, the nail that sticks out gets hammered in. So in principle, in Japan, a decision is not made by one person. It is done by a group of people. Yeah? There's not the one person that will stick out and say, we do it this way or that way. It is always that the team of people that is involved in this decision is doing the decision altogether. It also very often involves several departments, so you can easily be involving the procurement, but also engineering, R&D, maybe production, because they have to change something and so on. So they are always involved in this decision making. And even so, small things like asking if you can send a sample to a company, where when I was working back in R&D as a lab manager, would have said, yeah, please send it. I would just make this decision. In Japan, it can happen that this lab manager has to or will consult with their peers and the other people in the laboratory if they want to accept your sample or not. So this is something that is much more difficult in Japan. There are different ways of making this decision at the end. So it's done unanimously, and there are two main possibilities to do that. One is called nemawashi, which is more an informal way where you just talk to your peers. What do you think about that? Should we do this? And so on, and try to find the group opinion. Um, and then after the group opinion is found, then it goes up to the next level. So then you will inform your supervisor and say, we think we should do it this way or that way. And then depending, of course, on the hierarchy levels or on the decision, how important it is, then the supervisor will talk to his or her peers and find this opinion and so on, and then goes up and up until you are at the most or the highest level of hierarchy that has to make the decision for this question. And then this person at the top then will make the decision officially. And that's why it looks always very hierarchical in Japan. That decision is made hierarchical, and the Japanese structuring and layers in companies is very hierarchical, but it's very consensual. So you include everybody in the decision. And if there is someone not convinced that this is the right way to go forward and it's not unanimously, then people will try to convince this person, maybe going for lunch together or golfing or something like that. But as long as there's not everybody on board, then you don't make the decision. Ringi, just because I mentioned it here, Ringi is a little bit more formal process where you make a document with all the consequences, what the suggestions and so on. Then this is circulating to all the people involved, and they can write changes into it, and then it's consolidated. And you hear it already. It's a very complicated process to get the decision done. But what you can see, of course, it is something that takes a long time to get the decision. The very positive thing here is that implementation is usually very smoothly afterwards. So here's a comparison that is made from JETRO, so Japan External Trade Organization, and where they compare the US and the Japanese decision-making process. And in the US, they say you have a very short time until the decision, but then all the discussion starts. And I can just speak for Germany. I experienced exactly this. I got a decision from a steering committee, and then the discussion started with all the management and senior people around this. Whereas in Japan, you have all the discussions beforehand. So you discuss every possibility, every single aspect of the decision is discussed. That's also why so many people are involved, because when you make a decision in R&D to use a new product or a new supplier, then this may have an effect on the production. So this is why everybody is involved in that. And then at this end, you make a decision, and then it's very smooth in the implementation. What you then should not do, of course, is to ask for a change, because then you're back to square one, or at least you're a little bit back here in the decision in this decision making process. So you will have a problem that you will start a decision again. So compared to what we are used to in Europe is that it's very time consuming. You're waiting for a decision or for an answer weeks, if not months. Um, and it can happen that there are several meetings necessary. As I said, with different departments, you maybe have to explain it to procurement and then to R&D and engineering and so on. So this is something that you also have to consider. So overall, decision-making process in Japan is a very long time process, very time consuming, and yeah, for us can sometimes be very painful to wait for the answer. But it will come. Or if you don't get an answer, it's also an answer, which means we have not decided for it yet. So that's the decision-making process. Trust building is also very important to understand these differences here in Japan. Trust, of course, is something that is necessary for doing business everywhere in the world. If you don't trust someone, you don't want to do business with them. It's also about your gut feeling sometimes. It tells you, maybe not. So you need to have a basic trust for the other, your partner, your trade partner, or your business partner, in order to facilitate business. That's everywhere the same in the world, including Japan, of course. But how we build this trust is different from country to country. And to simplify it a little bit, in Western countries, usually you have what is called a task-based trust building. So the trust is based on common goals. We work together because I want to save money by buying your product. You want to sell it to me and make a business. So we have this common goal of both achieving something that is the common goal, basically. So this is why I trust you. It's based on task or on contracts. So even if something happens that was out of the ordinary, so the seller cannot provide the product or whatever, then we have a contract where it then exactly says what happens, who is liable for damages, and so on and so on. And we trust that the other side doesn't want to violate the contracts, at least not willingly. So this is how we build the trust in our countries. Japan, on the other side, has, as many Asian countries, by the way, a relationship-based trust building. So the trust is not based on a contract or that you believe the other has the same goal. It is based on knowing each other, and very often also on a deeper level. So over a longer time, understanding who is the other person, who is the other company. Also, when you're a new company entering the Japanese market, it is very often that they just want to see, who are you? What is your intent in Japan? What do you want here? Can I trust you? And this is something that takes time and is based on, or is building the relationship first, but then very much long-term oriented. There's also one thing that one can see. So for B2B business, it is that you need this time to develop the trust and the relationship. For B2C, what you can do is, in a shortcut, is a little bit that, for example, many celebrities are used for commercials in Japan, because there you have this anticipated trust to the person. You know them. They have been in TV shows in your living room in several times, and so on. So there is a trust already there. There's a relationship already there. And if this person trusts this product, then I can trust the product. In B2B, unfortunately, we cannot do this usually. So we need to really go with the long-term building of the trust. So the trust building, starting your business, takes much longer time in Japan. But once achieved, it's also rewarded with the loyalty. So it's not like what you sometimes hear, the Japanese companies do business only with Japanese. This is based on the long-term relationship. But once you have achieved this status, and once you have this relationship and the trust with the Japanese company, then also foreign companies are rewarded with the same loyalty in principle. It's also important to show the long-lasting commitment to the Japanese market. That's why also some companies, customers in Japan, at least in my experience and feeling, are waiting a little bit until they really start doing business, asking for samples or something like that, because they want to see, are you really committed to Japan? And what the Japanese don't understand and don't accept from their cultural perspective is that companies come to Japan, pop up, and if they don't sell after 6 months, then they shut down the shop and go back and withdraw from the Japanese market. This, of course, is contrary to the Japanese idea of long-term relationship and long-term business at the end. So they really want to see, are you really still there in Japan after a certain time? So takeaway points here, of course, time to stay is much longer in Japan than in other countries. You probably need several meetings and maybe even social activities like lunch together, dinner, golfing, all that comes into mind. And for that purpose, of course, we always recommend to have a local presence in Japan, because otherwise it is very difficult to build this relationship and the trust necessary for the business if you have to fly in from Europe every time. Third one, big difference, and in my view, one of the sources of many conflicts and misunderstandings is actually the behavior when we have a disagreement. It always happens from time to time. We cannot avoid this completely. Sometimes you have a delayed shipment. You have something that the customer asks you to ship in 6 weeks, and you are sure you can ship only in 8 weeks. So you have this kind of conflicts, disagreements, negative feedbacks. So telling the other side that something cannot work out or is not happening, and so on. And in many Western countries, and I would say including Germany, we are very direct and very frank when it comes to negative feedback. We think it's appreciated, or at least acceptable. It's considered honest, it's solution oriented. So if I can tell my customer, sorry, you can't get it in 6 weeks, you get it in 8, then the customer can work with that and can adjust their processes and what they have to do with this later. With my product, my delivery later. So this is what we consider solution oriented. In Japan, it's much more complicated. As I mentioned in the beginning, harmony is very important in Japan. Keeping harmony, and not destroying, not making the harmony, or kind of denting the harmony. You touch these topics only very carefully, and it's very often only hinted. It's very rarely directly communicated with the other party, with the other side. It's always hidden somehow. It's somehow wrapped into positive things. In addition, when you are here, I mean, besides the written or the spoken word, is also about the expression, the body language, and so on. All this is very important to understand what the Japanese really wants to convey as a message. And one very common phrase you sometimes hear is, "It is difficult, but we will try very hard," is something that is understood usually very positive. And in our European world, so, oh, the Japanese say they will try very hard, then it must happen and must be positive. But what they want to tell you is it's not going to happen. It's very difficult, and they will not succeed with that. And now here comes this problem of literal translation and understanding the meaning of something. If this message, it is difficult, but we will try very hard, is sent in Japanese language from one Japanese company to the other Japanese company, they will completely understand and fully understand what it means. It means it will not work out. But translated into English and then interpreted with our background, with our cultural background, and the understanding of the language, we misinterpret that. And this is the problem, that it then can be interpreted as dishonest. So why didn't you tell me? Well, they did tell you, but not in a way that can be understood easily. So it can be can be considered dishonest. Something that the Japanese have been hiding something. They're not giving enough information, and so on. But it did, but in a different way than we in Europe are used to. And the other way around, also our direct way of communicating things that are not positive and rather negative. can be considered very rude in Japan, because you're too direct, you're destroying the harmony between us. And if if these components or these three things that we just discussed, this long-term relationship that we need for the trust is also getting into connection here. If you want to give a feedback that a product is not good enough, but this product was kind of recommended from someone that you have a relationship to, that you know for years, that you have business for years, and now this is not working out as expected, then criticizing the product is also criticizing the person. And this is why it destroys harmony. And this is how these things are also connected to each other. So here we cannot distinguish, or in Japan and in other Asian countries, this is often very, very intertwined and connected together, the personal things and the topics that we are talking about. Whereas in Europe, we usually can separate very good between the personal relationship and the business topic that we are talking about. So, as I mentioned, this is a very, very common source of misunderstandings and all negative that comes out of that. And you need some high level of language understanding to translate this in with the meaning and not only literally. So this has been these three biggest differences I would see and in my experience that we have in culture between Europe and the UK and Japan. And I would also like to give you some ideas about the products and services that are necessary in Japan to understand this. And you will see it's based on what we also just discussed. So it's something that is really a foundation of understanding other things in Japan. As always, we need to find the right product for entering a market. And as I just mentioned, there is a long personal relationship binding between the seller and the customer in Japan. It's very long-term oriented. And that's why it is usually not possible to enter the Japanese market with a Me Too product for a cheaper price. So the price is not really something that is very important well, it is important in Japan, but no Japanese customer or company will change the supplier just for a cheaper price. This will not happen. This will destroy the harmony, as we discussed. This is a long-term business relationship that has been built over years or decades, and this is not easily stopped and changed to another supplier. So what we always highly recommend is that for the Japanese market to enter here, you need an innovative product or something that is not available in Japan, or at least have a different USP, so, that is differentiated from a product in Japan. But just Me Too is a very tough sell in Japan, except of course there would be an additional demand in the Japanese market, but this is not very often the case. So you need to have something that is something new in the market that you then can convince the Japanese customers to buy them. Of course, you also have to consider cultural and country-specific peculiarities here. There are sometimes products that cannot be sold in Japan. One example is that my former employer, Evonik, now Röhm, they have acrylic films, and they are used in the window frame lamination. So in Europe, you like to have PVC window frames for a good insulation, but you don't like the look, so you want to have you put a paper decor on it that it looks like wood, for example, and then you need a plastic film to cover it and to protect it from the weather and so on. And this is a huge market in Europe. However, there's almost no market in Japan because Japan is not using PVC windows. So all the windows here, or almost all of them, are aluminum frames. So you cannot sell this product in Japan. So these are the things you have to consider when you come to Japan or when you do the market entry. And this is what you have to of course, to make a study beforehand. Is this something that you can use in Japan? In addition, what you have to consider when you want to sell a product in Japan is that, of course, Japan has frequent earthquakes and other natural disasters. So we have typhoon seasons, heavy rains in Japan. So your products need to be robust and rather easy to maintain. This is, for example, when you are in the more machinery industry. If you think about, you have a stronger earthquake, then usually a whole region is impacted on that, and then all the companies in this region will shut down for a certain time and then try to restart. Now, if you would need a service engineer for each restart, the companies would need weeks to restart all their machines. So what the Japanese usually prefer is machinery that can be restarted from the own stuff. So you don't need a service engineer for that. So you need to consider these things when you select a product, if this can be used in a region like Japan that is prone of earthquakes. The market analysis, as I just mentioned, is there enough market potential? The window frames that I just mentioned, yes, there is a market also for PVC windows in Japan, but it's roughly 1 million windows a year. And this would make a turnover of $100,000, so revenues. So you maybe have a profit of 30,000 if you're lucky. So this is something that you can't build a business on. So it's just a big question to have upfront. And then, of course, also be aware that it's not only the competition in the market or what there is in Japan already is not only the same or the same product directly. It is also that they maybe have something that gives the same solution or the same benefit to the customers. To stick to this example with the lamination, you can also do lamination of outdoor furniture. But also here, outdoor furniture is not that common in Japan. And even then, the Japanese have developed coating systems. So they use either plastic or metal base frames. And then they do a coating on top of it. And they're now very sophisticated that haptics and the look is like wood. So it looks like a wooden table, but it is a different way. Or is a plastic or a metal frame below that. So you cannot sell also this product for lamination of wooden outdoor furniture, because also this is not a big market in Japan. Sometimes what you also have to consider is the high efficient products in Japan. So when you have a product that leads to the layoff of people, or that you need less people, it can be difficult to sell this in Japan, because the Japanese companies don't like to reduce their staff or even lay off people. I think this is something very rare in Japan and barely heard of. Although I have to say, in recent years, it gets more and more. Not that they lay off people, but the workforce is shrinking, and it is very difficult to get skilled workers in Japan. So here now, I would say, is a more opening to, for example, automation solutions than had been 5 years or 6 years before. So there is a change in Japan and in the companies, that they will also accept efficiency solutions. So also here, robustness, easy to maintain, is very important for the Japanese market. And then, of course, is there a market and a sales potential? But that's, of course, true for all the markets. And then service in Japan, here is a little bit an illustration of how you may consider service. In Japan, you heard probably also about this, that in Japan, service is very, very important. So taking care of the customer. And another proverb here is the customer is God. So in Germany, we say the customer is king. In Japan, the customer is God. So excellent service is expected. From all vendors, suppliers, and so on in Japan. So this is something very important. And when you have a product that needs service or regular services, or including also installation service, trainings, and so on, then of course you need to consider the service concept already when or before you enter the Japanese market. So it might often be necessary to have a service partner in Japan that also can handle the problems in Japanese. Still, I mentioned this in the beginning. Yes, English proficiency is very low in Japan. And it is, of course, possible to overcome this with translations and translators and so on. But for a service and offering a service or a training, you need to do this in Japanese language. And also the people that you are training and you're working with are probably can speak Japanese only. Which also brings me to the point that also user interfaces need to be in Japanese. So you cannot expect that if you have a product with a user interface and it's in English, then it will be very, very difficult to sell this in Japan. So this is something you have to consider. And then we have some sectors, some industries, for example, medical devices that need to have a local partner with a license. So in this case, the MAH license that they need to have. And there are also other things like recruitment and so on, where you need some licenses. And therefore, then you need a local partner. You cannot do this on your own. And another thing that also happens frequently is that Japanese companies don't like to do international trade or also international financial transactions or payments. I have cases where the Japanese companies tried 3 times to make it transfer to a normal European bank account. And it was very difficult to do that. And then it might also be very beneficial to have a local importer or a distributor that can help you with these transactions, be it for the logistics itself or for the financial transactions. So create your service concept early. Think about this. Also the question, do you need a local partner for your service, for the imports? What is the best solution? When do you also expect the commercial sales? So is it in the beginning rather prototyping and smaller packages and smaller quantities, and then maybe you have time to build up the service concept also while you start already with the business in Japan. So this is what I wanted to give you an introduction and some ideas about Japan and about the cultural differences in Japan, what to consider, why it is so different, and what are the consequences of it, in particular time and the understanding of the language. And yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions if you have some on these topics.
Ralph, it looks like we do have a question.
Yes.
More specifically about your services and whether you're able to offer any market analysis on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I will come to that in the second part. Yes, but thank you very much for the question. Yes, we also do market analysis.
Great. In which case, I think it's okay to move on to the second section.
Yeah.
We don't have any specific questions.
Okay, good. Then let me continue. Yeah, so how to start your business in Japan. As I mentioned, it is very difficult. You need the time limitations. You need to be in Japan, basically. And I think this is what all of my colleagues and my competitors here in Japan would agree to, that when you want to do business, you need to have the feet on the ground. Otherwise, it is almost impossible to do business with Japanese companies. So doing this via 10,000 kilometers distance and 8 hours time shift is something that is almost impossible. As I mentioned, building the trust, the relationship that you need over the time and so on. So you need to have a representation in Japan. Now, when you think about this, there are in principle three possibilities that you can use. One is a distributor that is selling on your behalf in Japan. The other one is establishing an own subsidiary. Just for the technicality, you can have a subsidiary, so a local company, or you can do a branch office. But for the purpose now, it doesn't matter the difference here. So you establish an own subsidiary, or what you can do is using a representative office. And now this term representative office, in my experience, is misunderstood rather often. Also because the definition that JETRO gives on their website is a little bit misleading, what I would say. So let me explain a little bit these differences between the distributor, the rep office, and having your own subsidiary in Japan. Now, working with a distributor, one of the biggest problems is that you give out the control of what you do in Japan. Distributors are working on their own behalf. You also have to consider that the distributor is optimizing their business, not your business or other customers, other clients' business. So they are working what is best for them. And if they decide it is not in their interest to spend a lot of money for marketing and promotion for your product, then it's very difficult to change that and to push for that. So the control over what is done in Japan is very limited when it comes to distributors. Of course, the costs are quite good, because usually you pay them on a commission basis. So only if you have sales, you will pay the distributor. Although I have to say there's also a big misunderstanding here already. From your perspective, you would say you pay the distributor. A Japanese distributor sees itself as part of a purchasing department. So distributors in Japan are seeing themselves as the arm for getting new products for existing customers. And they will not do a lot of promotion into other markets or into new markets. And if one of their customers asks them, hey, can you provide us with this and this pumps or products and so on, then they will start doing this and doing a recommendation and so on. They're also handling, this is what I just said before about financials and tradings and so on, they will also handle the international business. But in their understanding, then they get paid with a markup from the customer, not from the vendor. It's a very big difference in understanding how they think. And then also the market access is so it's yellow because you of course have usually a good market access in one specific area, but it's very difficult to convince a distributor to step into another market where they are not working now. So we have sometimes products that can be used in very different applications. One of our clients is a Swiss pump manufacturer, and we have inkjet printers and medical devices. And finding a distributor usually then means you have one for the inkjet or one for the medical device, but not one that is covering both. And he will also refuse to do so. So the market access is limited. And also with that, the flexibility that you have also regarding the staffing, so who is taking care of your business, and you don't have the control of how much personnel are working on your products in Japan. Then we have the subsidiary. If you decide for that, or if you think about this, of course you have the full control. I mean, subsidiary is that they are doing what you want, and they are working solely for your company. and they are so dedicated for your products, of course, so you have the full control, but the costs are very high. In particular, when we talk now about B2B, where you maybe need, as I mentioned, you have 1-2 years until you get into a real business with the customers, and then you sell an intermediate product, a machinery, whatever that goes into another development stage at your customers. Then you maybe have commercial sales after 3 or 4 years. And in 4 years, if you pay a full subsidiary, one FTE, then you're paying about $1 million and don't have the sales for that, and cannot justify these expenses. Besides the question, sometimes also for smaller and very niche products, what should one FTE do all the time? So we have some clients of us, they maybe have 20 customers in Japan, not more, because it's so specialized, such a niche product. One FTE, I mean, you can visit each customer every other week, which is usually not helpful for your business. So the cost factor, of course, is usually something that speaks against a subsidiary for small and mid-sized enterprises. You have, of course, a full market access, so you can, it doesn't matter which market you want to sell, you can, of course, go into all of them, also in parallel, but you have some limitations in the flexibility. Also consider here in staffing, I mean, in particular, because you have to consider that the Japanese labor laws are protecting the employees very much. So once you have decided for a person, it is very, very difficult to change this person, to get to lay off this person, and so on. It's also something that is difficult when you have different markets. You maybe have one specialist for medical devices, but this is not necessarily a person that is specialized in inkjet printers. So with whom do you work? Which one do you use? So the flexibility, once you have established the subsidiary and decided for a person, is not that high that you can really change easily from one to the other. Now, the representative office, what we do and recommend, is basically means like a part-time outsourced sales and marketing department. One is that you have control, because we do work dedicated for our clients, and we do this in close consultation, what to do in Japan, how we can do things. Cost is, yes, there are costs associated with that, because we get a monthly service fee for that. We are not paid only on commission. There are also mixed model possibilities. We have, of course, the market access and the flexibility. So we can grow the business, we can grow the staffing with the business growing and so on. We can go into different markets. We can work together with people in one or the other market. And if you want to see this here, just to summarize them, we are very flexible with the staffing. So we can start with in-house assistants that we have. We can hire dedicated part-timers. There's a big market of retired managers in Japan that want to do something more than golfing or sitting at home. So they have excellent connections into certain industry. And yes, we can work with two of them, medical device and inkjet printers. So this is something we can do. We can also go up to sales managers. So if the business grows, then we can also hire full-time personnel, still in Santen Consulting. So there's still no need for a subsidiary. However, of course, you might think about sometime you want to do a subsidiary, and just last month we ended the cooperation with one of our clients because they now have a subsidiary in Japan. And we can also support with the registration, so how to register, how to fund the companies in Japan. We can also operate them. So there's also mixed models possible, like having a subsidiary but without staff. So the company itself does not need to have staff. So we can use our flexible staffing at Santen, but still using a name or the brand of your subsidiary in Japan. So there's different possibilities that we can do. And of course, cultural consultation. So we working in this border line now several years, and we understand the other side, and we can consult, of course, what we should do and how we can do in Japan. In addition, there are also some hidden benefits of a representative office that I would like to mention. One is about negotiation and conflict mediation. So if you're, for example, negotiating payment terms or something like that, then still Santen Consulting is considered a kind of a third party. So we usually get a more direct feedback from the companies in Japan. Then they maybe would give the customer, our clients, directly in a direct conversation where you much more care about losing your face. So this is something that taking us into the loop can be very helpful for the negotiation. Translation of real meaning and also knowing the culture gap. As I mentioned before, it is important to do not a literal translation only, but a translation that gives you an idea of the real meaning of it. But sometimes the problem also is to recognize what can be misunderstood. And this is where I think it is very positive working with us, that I, for example, know and recognize what can be misunderstood on the European side, which is maybe not so obvious to Japanese people because they are living in their culture. As we now discussed, getting aware of the differences is one of the crucial points to have awareness and then work with it. And I can, for example, usually identify when a Japanese company says something, we translate that, and then I can give an idea on, oh, sorry, but you probably understood it this way, but what I mean is that. And then it shows also more of a long-term commitment to the Japanese market when you have a Japanese office than just using a distributor. Of course, here a subsidiary is the ultimate goal. This shows the best commitment. But having a representative office, and we usually then also work to the outside as Japan office of our client. So this shows already some commitment to the Japanese market. We can assist and, for example, become members in associations that otherwise would be difficult. Some may even decline foreigners and foreign companies directly as a member. And even then, you usually have all the proceedings in Japanese. So this is where we can help with. We can also help with product registrations. We have one company, one product where we register now for a certain mark to use in Japan for biodegradability, and you can register only as a Japanese entity. So you can't do this as a foreigner from outside. So this is what we can help with as a representative office, and then also trading support or importer management. There is something, as I mentioned, if you look to the JETRO website, they tell you that a representative office is allowed only for marketing activities and is not allowed to engage in sales activities. That's true, and this is something you have in all countries, basically, because the representative office is not a legal entity. It is a kind of virtual thing that basically you authorize us to address the Japanese market as your official office in Japan. But it's not a legal entity, and that therefore it can't enter into contracts. You can't sell or buy something if you're not a legal entity. However, Santen Consulting can. Santen Consulting is a company, so we can do the trading, we can buy and sell. We do this also for some of our clients now in prototype and sample stages, where then officially Santen Consulting buys from our client and sells it in Japan to the Japanese customers. And this is, of course, done, again, not as representative office, but as Santen Consulting, which also brings me to the point that, yes, we are working very transparent on this. So also to the Japanese companies and customers, we always show that we are Santen Consulting and the representative office of this and this company in Japan, which is exactly out of these reasons. But this is something we can do. So you can have this combination of representation, a part-time marketing and sales department in Japan, and still someone who can also help you doing the trade and at least the first steps of sampling and prototyping and so on. Importer management, yes, if it comes to bigger amounts, I would not say that my company at the moment can handle containers, but I mean, well, who knows what happens in the future and how we grow. But yes, then we can also work together with an importer. We have one other client from Denmark. We are selling biodegradable polyester fibers, and they are usually sold in hundreds of kilograms and tons. And then we work with the distributor in Japan. But the marketing in Japan is still done by us, and we are the contact point, and we use the distributors for market access, and not only one distributor, but three in this case, to also address the different markets that these fibers can be used in. So that's what we can do for you in Japan. I don't want to go into these details here. I think I will send you these slides, of course. Yeah. So you can read through that later. What I want to mention, also in reply to the question, thank you very much. We do also project-based supports. So we do, on one hand, business partner discovery. So in B2C, where we are not have the right sales channels to wholesalers, retailers, and so on, we are happy to help in finding a good distributor in Japan that is passionate about your products, that can really work for your product, which might not be the big ones you find in English in the internet. So this is something that we offer. And then, of course, also the market studies. We do market studies up to business plans. We also have this done actually in a B2C or B2B2C product, where we then also used an online consumer survey tool. So that's all possible, what we can do to give you an understanding of the market, and if it's really reasonable for you, and what to expect in Japan, and when, of course. Yeah. With that, again, you can see that. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. I hope I could give you an idea about why Japan is considered so difficult, but once you understand it, yeah, what you can do about it and how you can work with that, and how you can start business in Japan, very flexible, very reasonable, I think. Also to test the waters. I mean, that's also something that you can do with our help. And yeah, I'm happy to take your questions now.
Thank you so much, Ralph. It doesn't look like we have any active questions at the moment, but we will be following up with everyone. So if you're happy for us to share the information that you shared. Oh, sorry, we do have one that's come through asking if you have any expertise in the alcohol sector, alcohol beverages.
Personally or business?
Let's say professional.
Well, it's B2C. We alcohol, well, it depends, honestly. I mean, this is something that we really need to go a little bit deeper, probably. In general, it's B2C. So we would recommend that we can, for example, find a partner for you in Japan that is an importer for specialties in the beverage or alcohol sector. Otherwise, Japan has large breweries, Kirin, Asahi, which are also globally active. So competing against them can be difficult. So it really depends on the product that you have.
Specifically, it looks like exporting wine from the UK.
Wine to Japan, yeah, is something that is certainly a growing market in Japan. It's also a growing, how to say, competition to the Japanese wineries. Although they're still not that good, I think, and need some more time, but it will come to that. But as I said, we don't do that, but I have a Japanese friend actually who is working in this area, so I'm happy to connect you later. Yeah.
Fantastic. We've also seen quite a few new market entries in specifically wine from the UK to Japan. So please do get in touch, and hopefully between us we'll be able to
Yes, yeah,
continue.
sure. Happy
Perfect.
to do so.
And likewise, if any other specific inquiries come through, please just send them either to the BCCJ, or we'll be sharing Ralph's contacts afterwards
Yes.
with everyone. Ralph, thank you so much. I think you gave a perfect balance of overview between
Thank
the
you.
obstacles and the challenges, but also
Yeah,
the opportunities. So thank you.
thank you very much.
And I hope that everyone has left this call, or will be leaving this call, with some more confidence around entering the Japanese market. And if there are any additional questions, like I say, please get in touch anytime. We will have a recording going up as well in case there's anything that you missed. Thank you. Okay, thanks so much, Ralph. Any final comments from you for our guests?
I just want to thank you very much for joining. I know it's early morning at your time, at least in UK. And yes, I'm happy to answer then all your questions also in one-on-one follow-ups. And I see one question about what's the email. We will send this out to all participants that you can get in touch with us.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Please
Thanks.
enjoy your Mondays ahead and your weeks, and
Yeah.
we'll be in touch shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph.